Right now, as we speak, the globe is quite literally being pushed to its limits. I mean, we're talking about a brutal $500 million daily economic hemorrhage over in the Middle East. At the very same time, we've got lightning-fast F-22 stealth fighters deploying and totally upending the balance of power in the Pacific. And if that wasn't enough, crippling internet blackouts orchestrated by the Kremlin that are suffocating their very own economy to the tune of 4.5 billion rubles a day. These aren't just random, isolated incidents, you know? They're highly active fault lines of a world order under immense strain. And the stakes for global stability? Well, they have literally never been higher.
Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to synthesize three distinct but incredibly consequential geopolitical events that are testing the boundaries of military, economic, and political power right now. By looking at these pressure points together, we can really start to see how the traditional global power balance is shifting in real time.
Here's our roadmap for today. First, global flashpoints redrawing the map. Second, Hormuz, the underwater trap. Third, the Indo-Pacific steel shield. And fourth, the Kremlin's inner civil war. Section 1. Global flashpoints redrawing the map.
Section 2, Hormuz, the underwater trap. Let's move to the Middle East and see how this builds. So while the current world order is facing all these simultaneous pressure tests, down in the Strait of Hormuz, the physical geography itself is being weaponized. It's the very definition of asymmetric warfare. On one side, Iran's strategy relies on these incredibly claustrophobic 29-meter-long Ghadar-class mini-submarines. We're talking vessels that weigh just 125 tons, hold a tiny 7-person crew, and can just lie completely silent on the seabed for days at a time. And they back those up with swarms of fast fiberglass boats hiding out in coastal caves, plus devastating acoustic and magnetic sea mines. Now, on the other side of the ledger, you have the U.S. conventional response, which is basically a massive steel wall of billion-dollar assets. I'm talking Nimitz-class aircraft carriers, Arleigh Burke-guided missile destroyers, failing systems that can literally fire thousands of rounds a second, and EA-18G Growler electronic warfare jets. It's an absolute technological mismatch. But here's the catch. In the super narrow Strait of Hormuz, just dropping $1 billion of steel into the water doesn't guarantee an easy win. Why? Because the Strait of Hormuz averages a depth of only 36 meters. That is shallow. Massive U.S. nuclear subs have an absolute nightmare trying to maneuver in that, which makes it the perfect camouflage for Iran's tiny diesel-electric ghosts. So how do you even hunt them? Well, it becomes this intense, high-tech cat-and-mouse game. Step 1. US P-8 Poseidon aircraft drop an invisible electronic net of sonobuoys right from the sky. Step 2. Destroyers drag towed array sonars behind them to catch the absolute faintest mechanical click miles away. Step 3. MH-60 Seahawk helicopters essentially X-ray the street using dipping sonars. And finally, Step 4. Virginia-class nuclear attack subs just wait in the deep, listening in the dark for their prey. It's this massive multi-layered dragnet that uses AI to map the acoustic landscape literally millimeter by millimeter.
So what does this all mean? Why does this extreme military posture actually matter? Well, this relentless U.S. blockade means Iranian-flagged tankers are being completely paralyzed from the air. This absolute naval dominance is causing an economic hemorrhage of roughly $500 million every single day. Just let that sink in for a second. That staggering financial loss creates an almost unbearable pressure on the Iranian economy. It's the kind of pressure that pushes the radical wing of the Revolutionary Guard to demand a direct, destructive military conflict. It's an economic suffocation that could, quite frankly, spark a desperate region-wide escalation at any given moment.
Section 3. The Indo-Pacific Steel Shield.
From the claustrophobic depths of the Middle East, we're shifting gears to the vast skies of the Far East, where a single aircraft deployment is completely altering a region's military calculus. The U.S. recently deployed a fleet of F-22 Raptors to Kadena Air Base in Okinawa. That's just a 30 to 45-minute supersonic flight to Taiwan. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the F-22 possesses all-aspect stealth. Its radar cross-section is literally the size of a marble. That means an enemy radar might just think it's looking at a passing flock of birds instead of a supersonic fighter jet. Compare that to China's numerically superior J-20, which only boasts frontal stealth, meaning it remains highly visible from the sides or the rear. And then there's Russia's Su-35s, which totally lack modern stealth, and their Su-57s, which are unfortunately plagued by fatal engine flaws. By simply placing the F-22 in Okinawa, Washington instantly neutralized the air dominance strategies of both Beijing and Moscow in one single massive chess move.
But hey, the U.S. isn't acting alone here. To counter aggressive maneuvers around Taiwan,
Tokyo has undergone a truly historic military awakening. For the first time since World War II, Japan has sea-based aircraft carrier projection. They've actually taken their massive Izumo and Kaga helicopter destroyers and converted them into light aircraft carriers. They had to heavily armor the decks just to withstand thousands of degrees of heat from the vertical takeoff F-35B stealth jets. Plus, they just passed a record $56 billion defense budget, they're pouring resources into autonomous drone swarms, and they've developed Type 25 hypersonic anti-ship missiles that fly at 5 times the speed of sound. This massive technological buildup completely shifts the regional balance of power. It's basically erecting an insurmountable steel dome over the Pacific.
Section 4. The Kremlin's Inner Civil War. Now, while high-tech fleets and stealth jets are dominating the oceans and skies, the most dangerous conflict for the Russian state right now is actually a shadow war, and it's raging internally ahead of the highly anticipated 2026 Duma elections. You see, the strain of war, heavy sanctions, and mobilization fatigue have caused a severe factional split right inside Vladimir Putin's inner circle. They've fractured into two deeply opposing camps. On one side, you have Sergei Kiriyenko and his technocrats. They advocate for what they call a controlled democracy, basically managing public anger through digital manipulation, funding Telegram trolls, curating fake opposition parties, all while trying to maintain some semblance of economic sustainability. On the flip side, you have the FSB hardliners. They believe any softness is a fatal weakness. Their model, a total security state driven by an iron fist, complete internet blackouts, zero dissent, and endless lists of foreign agents. They are fundamentally clashing over the very DNA of post-Putin Russia. It really goes to show that sometimes the most ruthless battles happen over paperwork in the bureaucracy. And the technocrats' biggest argument against the FSB's total lockdown strategy, it revolves around a terrifying data point straight from the Russian central bank: the loss of 2.5 million skilled workers. We're talking about IT specialists, engineers, and doctors fleeing to places like Georgia and the UAE. It's a catastrophic brain drain. The technocrats are sounding the alarm, warning that if the FSB implements full-scale restrictions, a modern army and economy simply cannot survive without these mines. It's literally a technological setback of decades that is actively crippling their own weapons production. But, economic fears aren't the only thing driving Kremlin paranoia. Listen to this chilling quote from Kiriyenko regarding the upcoming elections. "Veterans are dangerous in parliament. They could get out of control." When Defense Minister Belugosov actually demanded real combat veterans be placed on the election lists, Kiriyenko pushed back hard. He wanted manageable bureaucrats instead. This perfectly illustrates the regime's deep-seated terror regarding its own returning soldiers. They are absolutely terrified that hundreds of thousands of armed, traumatized men returning to a poorer society pose a massive, uncontrollable threat to the stability of the state itself. The FSB, however, they completely dismiss those economic warnings and the need for subtle control. In fact, they're already pushing forward with a digital siege. Back in May 2026, the FSB enacted preemptive internet blackouts across 40 regions. They even targeted remote areas where drones couldn't possibly reach. They shut down mobile internet, banking apps, government portals, the whole shebang. The stakes here are just incredible. This internal restriction suffocates the Russian economy by up to 4.5 billion rubles in a single day. It clearly shows us that the FSB hardliners prioritize total state survival and absolute control, even if it means financially crushing their own people to get it. So, we've traversed the claustrophobic depths of the Strait of Hormuz, the hyper-modern air shields of the Pacific, and the paranoid, fracturing halls of the Kremlin. As these extreme pressures build simultaneously all across the map, we really have to ask, will these underwater traps, high-tech air shields, and inner Kremlin fractures boil over into a new, uncontrollable global era of conflict? It's the multi-billion-dollar question that will absolutely define the rest of this decade. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you next time.